Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my quick Chambers of Xeric guide. The goal of this guide is to give a quick rundown on how to do Raids 1. It's going to be focused on team raids rather than solos. I do have a full Raids 1 guide linked in the description that's going to go into a lot more detail than this video will. I also have a couple of full Raids videos that just show straight up examples of the bosses, so if you want more information than I can pack into this guide, then those are the videos for you. Let's first talk about some recommended stats for Chambers of Xeric. I'd say bare minimum 85 attack, strength, defense, range, and magic. 90 plus in these stats will be a lot more helpful for your team though. As for prayer, you should have at least 70 prayer and piety, which requires the King's Ransom like training ground waves. And having up to 77 prayer and unlocking rigor and augury is very big, but if you're an Iron Man, maybe that's why you're here in the first place. Having one team member with at least 90 herb lore is a big deal, so having 90 plus herb does make you a more valuable team member for your squad, plus having a high woodcutting, mining, and thieving level can help during the raid. The gear and inventory section can be a very long talk on its own, so in this section, I'm mostly just going to point you towards my full guide for that. In this quick guide, though, we're going to look at some of those setups that the wiki currently has posted on their Chambers of Xeric page. This cheap setup here highlights some of the bare minimum weapons that I usually tell people to have: the Abyssal Tentacle, Trident to the Swamp, and the Toxic Blowpipe. You do need all three attack styles during the raid, and these are solid places to start. Note there's a BGS in the inventory too. Even with a budget setup, you do want to bring a BGS, as it really helps with the speed of many of the bosses. The room pouch should have either water spells for the Ohm fight, preferably Humidify from the Lunar Spellbook, or maybe fire spells if there's an Ice Demon room, and in the long run, having Thralls is better for DPS, and you're going to see that in the next setup. This row of items here is dependent on what bosses are in the raids. You only need to bring a pickaxe if you have Guardians, an Imbued Salve Amulet if you have Mystics. The Dragon Sword is a stab weapon for Vasa, and the Lockpick is for Thieving room. Your ratio potions are going to change as you get better at raiding, but don't forget a stamina potion. Anytime that you need to run, but you're out of run energy, that is the worst. Let's peek at more of the mid-tier setup. This is a mid to high tier. To be fair, we're not really best in slot for every item here, but some of these items are very expensive on their own. First of all, the weapons. For melee, you see that we've upgraded to the Dragon Hunter Lance. This is one of your biggest upgrades for the Chambers of Xeric, as it is huge for the Ohm fight, and it's very useful for many of the pre-Ohm bosses, since it is strong with stab and crush. In the inventory, they've upgraded to the Sanguine Esty instead of the Trident to the Swamp, which is very helpful for the Ohm fight since it will heal you. It's pretty expensive, to be fair. They're still rocking a blowpipe, but we've also added the Dragon Hunter crossbow, which is huge for Ohm's head phase. The crossbow can be good in other rooms too. It's not purely for Ohm, but it very much helps out at Ohm. Notice the Zenyte Jewelry upgrades. Zenyte Jewelry is some of the best non-weapon upgrades out there for combat. Also, for this spec weapon, we've upgraded to the Dragon Warhammer. Once you get a few hammer specs landed on a monster, then the BGS is actually better than the Dragon Warhammer from there on. So it's nice to have one guy on the team that still has a BGS, but the Warhammer spec is great. And you may notice that there is a Book of the Dead in the inventory, which is required if you're using Thralls during the raid. Here's a look at a maxed out gear setup for raids, which is extremely expensive, to be fair. Torva is still overpriced. I've been rocking Inquisitors lately, which is the second best in slot, as long as you have the full Inquisitors set. The Twisted Bow is the best range weapon, but the Bofa is a very close second, and it's way less expensive to get a Bofa in full crystal armor. The Armadillo armor is going to be outdone by Masori very soon here, but it's still thick gear, and they've got Zari Van braces for even more range strength. For the magic gear, they've added Ancestral, and they're still rocking the Sanguine Esty. The Harmonized Staff can output really good damage, but it's very expensive, so it's one of the last things that you should be thinking about for upgrading. If you're looking at the bottom of the inventory, you'll notice that there is a Scythe of Vitur instead of the Dragon Hunter Lance. The Scythe is better DPS even on Ohm's melee hand, but it is again very expensive, so you can wait a little while before pulling the trigger on that one. The Dragon Hunter Lance is very good in here. Like I said, you could talk about gear for raids for a very long time, so I was brief there, just trying to point out some of the main things and then hoping those screenshots will do you some justice, but I didn't go over every item in the screenshot, so if you have any questions about the gear section, I am happy to help out with that in the comments section below. Let's go and start talking about some of the puzzle rooms. First, we'll start with the Tightrope room. To get through this room, you're going to need the Keystone Crystal, which is on the other side of the rope. You can cross the rope at any time, but any of the mages or rangers that are not already hitting somebody will target you, so you're going to have to kill them first. You should use your best range weapon in here. Kill the mages first, then the rangers. You can use this flower. Sometimes it's actually going to be the exit to the room, but you can hide over here by the rangers so that they won't attack you even if they're targeting you. This is really only good if you're using a weapon that is slower than them, like a T-bow or a crossbow, or if you're doing this in a large team setting. While it's targeting you, it's not hitting anybody, and your teammates can get some damage in there. That way you guys take less damage in this room. Once you're down to one ranger and the team seems to have it, they can send one person across the rope to get the keystone and then use it on the barrier to move on to the next room. Let's take a look at the crab room. There's going to be 4 colored crystals in the room and a statue that's going to continuously emit a light orb from it. You have to use the crabs in the room to deflect the light orb towards those colored crystals, and you have to hit the crabs to change their color, which in turn will change the color of the light. Hitting the colored crystals with the correctly colored light is going to turn it to white, and then when you have have all 4 white crystals, the barrier in the door is going to disperse. When the light bounces off a crab, it will change direction clockwise, so it's going to go from north to east, east to south, south to west, and west back to north. Just getting the light to hit the crystal is one thing, but it also has to be the correct color. The white light will dissipate the black crystal. A red light is achieved by hitting the crab with a melee attack, and that will dissipate the blue crystal. A green light is achieved by using a range attack on a crab before the white light bounces off of it, and that will get the purple crystal. And then finally, the blue light is achieved when a magic attack is used on a crab, and that's going to dissipate the yellow crystal. Crab's room generally makes a lot more sense just as you do them more, so seeing a lot of examples might help, and we're not trying to pack a ton of examples into this quick guide, so the full guide or some of my full raids vids might help you out with that. Next puzzle room, we have the ice demon. You need to chop kindling and light these barriers to slowly thaw out the demon. Once he is thawed out, he's going to walk to the center of a room and begin to attack. He's going to thaw out faster with more braziers lit. The brazier with the ice demon in front of it does lose its kindling faster, but that doesn't really matter once you get to 3 or more players in the team. You can also use this chest in the room to empty some inventory spaces for chopping, but make sure that you have your gear before the ice demon thaws out, as it's really a pain in the ass to grab your stuff from the chest while he's attacking. Use protect from range and then dodge the snowballs that the ice demon throws. Most of the team can stand far away from the ice demon while somebody on the other side is targeted with all the snowballs. The ice demon is very weak to fire spells, so having a team bring fire surge goes a long way. Otherwise, just using your best range weapon is the best way to go about it. Thieving room is very easy, but it is pretty boring too. All you need to do is look for grubs in these chests and then feed the scavenger at the end of the room. A lockpick is going to make this a little bit faster. You can find bats in one of the chests and you get bonus points for that, and you can use them to heal up a little bit. Some of the chests will hit you with poison damage, not actually inflicting poison, just a little poison damage. Poison chests do not move, so don't reopen one hoping that there's going to be grubs in it. In a team setting, you can get half an inventory. Go ahead and dump your grubs and then grab any extras that you need. You need 30 grubs in a solo, and even though it scales up, it's not 30 per person in a team, so a trio is not going to need 90, it's more like 50 or 60. If the scavenger stops eating for a full minute, it will heal back up, but this is pretty tough to let happen. It's easy to see when you're done with the room because you stop gaining points from putting grubs in the troughs, so if you put some grubs in there and you get no points, the room is already over. Let's head to the combat room, starting with the Mystics. Use your best range weapon and protect from magic. They can use a melee attack as long as they have a path to walk up to you, and once they try to hit you with melee, they're going to be stuck doing that until somebody else attacks them. You can use this mechanic to sort of round them up so that only one of them is attacking at a time. It really helps if everybody is knocking out the same Mystic and a maximum of 1 Mystic is attacking at any time. That way everybody takes less overall damage during the room. These do drop seeds, so go ahead and grab some of them if you need them. All you have to do to move on from the Guardian's room is to defeat 2 statues here. You have to use a pickaxe against them. If you don't have a pickaxe, there is an iron pick spawn in the room. You don't want to just stand there and attack these things. You need to run back after you attack so that you don't take a lot of damage. This is called flinching. You can run back 2 squares and then take 1 step in before you attack. That way you don't use as much run energy. This isn't necessary, but it is kind of convenient to save some run. These guys also drop seeds, so pick them up if your squad hasn't gotten any yet. The Shaman's room can be a little annoying since you usually get to fight Shamans with your Shazian gear on, but this is one of the fastest rooms in the raid, and you should only have to use like prayer and anti-poison to get through the room if you do it correctly. Protect from range and use your best range weaponry. The main thing that you have to dodge is those big green balls. As long as you're running right when they attack, you really should never be hit by a green ball unless you're running into somebody else's maybe. Even if you're using a blowpipe, this will work out fine. Using the bow for the T-bow or even a crossbow in here does make it a lot easier since they have more range and you don't have to attack every other hit. You get a little bit more time to run. Try to make sure that you stay up on the walls of the room so that the Shamans don't jump up in the air. Anytime that the Shamans jump, you can't attack them, so the more that they jump, the slower the room is going to be. Don't forget your seeds when the room is done. On to the Muttadiles. To finish this room, you have to knock out a little Muttadile, and then a bigger one is going to spawn from out of the water. And once you KO the big one, you can move on. Whenever either of the Muttadiles get under half health, they're going to go over to the meat tree and heal. They can only heal 3 times each from the tree, but there's a couple of ways to deal with this. Many teams like to freeze the Muttadile so that it can't reach the tree. You can do this using a freeze spell or a Zami God Sword spec. While the Muttadiles are trying to heal, they become invincible for a little bit when they're locked into the tree, and then eventually they'll target a player once again. I prefer to chop the meat tree down to start the fight, as it does tend to be more consistent for the team. You can get an axe from the scavengers in the raid, but it is faster if everybody just brings an axe. You can bring any axe, as every axe just works the same here, so many players bring a bronze axe that you can just drop when you're done. Your woodcutting level does affect how quickly you chop the tree, though. Once you've chopped the tree, you can target the little Muttadile. Magic works well, and it will protect you from the big one, wearing wearing your magic gear. It's actually very weak to stab, so the Grazi Rapier is very good here, and then you can always just default to some range gear. I personally go for magic. The big one is weak to range, so the T-bow and the Bofa will do the most damage here, though a crossbow with ruby bolts can pop some good hits, and even the blowpipe can get it done. Protect from range and stay away from him so that he doesn't melee you. You can safe spot the big one, the easiest spot being right here by these strange bells if the entrance to the room is in the northern side of the room. Otherwise, you have to use the water or other walls in the room to try to get him stuck on the northeast side of you. You do get some overloads from this room, so that is very helpful to have early in the raid. Now we have Tekton. Tekton only uses melee attacks, and he is weak to crush. It's very important to have a good crush weapon in here. If you're using a lance for Olm, then you could just set it to crush for Tekton, but even the Zamihass is not a bad option. You really do need a hammer or a BGS for this room. Unlike with other bosses, if you land a 0 on Tekton with any of those specs, it still lowers his defense a little bit. Tekton's going to be on his anvil when the fight starts. One player needs to run up close to get his attention and then run to the back of the room. It's better to let Tekton walk as far away from the anvil as possible, so then you get more attacks in when he's going back to the anvil. Dump all of your specs right away and switch to your best crush weapon. You can run around Tekton counterclockwise to dodge his attacks, and make sure that you attack him from these squares. That way you don't ever walk on the corner. If you're standing on the corner squares when he tries to attack you, then it could send him back to his anvil early. When he goes back to the anvil, he will heal up a little bit and send sparks flying around the room every few ticks, so you gotta walk around those and avoid the vents in the corners. When he comes back off the anvil, he'll target one player who should go to the back of the room, let him get all the way back there, and start crushing again. Tekton also drops overloads, which is very convenient for supply runs. We're moving on to Vasa and Asterio. Vasa's just going to be a pile of rocks in the middle of the room at first. He always starts the fight with his teleport attack, so you should send one person in while everybody waits outside the room. It is best to send the player with the least health remaining. Doesn't matter what your hit points level is, how much health you currently have. He'll teleport the player, stun them, and turn off their overheads. At this point, you can begin to heal up because he already decided how much damage he's going to do from the teleport. That damage can also be reduced by your teammates. As soon as the fire shows up at the entrance to the room, everybody needs to run in and use Protect from Magic. As long as you protect yourself with Protect from Magic and you get hit by the attack, but you have that overhead on, it's also going to reduce the damage taken from players who were teleported in, so you get to save your teammate with this one. Vasa will then start throwing rocks and walking towards one of the 4 crystals in the room. Protect from range will lower the damage you take from these rocks, but you should keep moving so that you don't get hit by them. Attack Vasa with range and also make your way towards the crystal that he's headed to. Once he's on the crystal, he will start to heal. Attack the crystal with a stab weapon. A stab weapon is very important for this part. If you're using a Dragon Hunter Lance for Olm, that will be fine to just put that on stab and use it on the crystal, but it's even worth bringing the Grazi Rapier if you have extra space. Once you kill the crystal, you can switch back to range and start to attack Vasa. If you take too long to knock the crystal out, Vasa will use the teleport attack when he gets to the center of the room. This is an accumulative timer between the crystals, so if you knock out 2 crystals really quickly and then you're kind of slow on the third, you're not going to have enough time to kill it. It's not like it resets the timer every time you KO a crystal. It actually resets the timer when he teleports you. Generally, every 3rd crystal, you won't have enough time to get the kill, and he's going to use that teleport attack when he gets to the center. Anybody who is teleported to the middle needs to drink some brews, and anybody who's teleported to the outskirts will be able to run in and use Protect from Magic, so run in as fast as possible and save your teammates. Attack Vasa on the way to the crystal, stab the crystal, start ranging Vasa when that's over. Eventually, you will KO him. Vasa drops a couple of Xeric's aids, 2 twisted potions, and some Endarkened juice. Now we have Vespula, the bug lady. Vespula is an annoying fight on paper, but if you have 90 plus hit points, you can kind of cheese the fight using Redemption. Vespula can poison you, by the way. It is rare, but it can happen, so having an anti-poison or a Sanfu serum ready is important. The best strategy is to stand just outside of the grub's range here, and then you run back and forth attacking the portal. This requires a weapon with at least 8 range, so if you're using a crossbow, make sure you put it on long range. The best weapon for this is currently the Harmonized Staff, soon to be surpassed by the Shadow of Tumekin, but the Bofa really cranks here too. You'll be clicking every other tick with this method. Click on the portal, then back to the spot, and you want to make sure that you always have Redemption on when you go running in there. This is a lot simpler if you've already gotten a Prayer Enhance and you're restoring prayer points over time. Otherwise, I would bring an extra prayer potion for this room. If you have a team of 3 or more, you will need somebody to heal the grubs so that they don't hatch. You have to pick these plants on the other side of the room and then use them to heal the grubs. It is very important that these grubs don't spawn, as they will heal the portal. Generally, having a 3rd of your team on this isn't too bad, so if you have 6 team members, having 2 of them heal is probably a good option, though a 6-man Vespula does not sound that fun. Vespula drops Xeric's aids, a revitalization, and a prayer enhance. Finally, for the boss rooms, we have Vanguards. There are 3 Vanguards, a Ranger who uses this pile of rocks for the range attacks, a Melior who uses its tentacles to whip you, and a Major who doesn't have any tentacles at all. The Ranger is weak to stab, the Melior is weak to magic, and the Major is weak to range. You have to kill these 3 evenly. If you do too much damage to one of them, then all of them will fully heal. You can see this red line at the low end of the health bar. It can show you how low that you can get any of the Vanguards before they're going to heal. In a team of 3, I find it best to set one person up at each of the 3 spots, and then you just switch your gear depending on which of the 3 travels over to you. You could also have each person just follow around whichever Vanguard they are assigned to, so they don't have to switch gear. This is a little bit more dangerous since you take damage if you're on top of them while they're moving around, and if you don't get all the way to your spot when they do spawn back up, then you might get targeted by a different Vanguard. If you stand far enough into the corner, then the meleeer will not be able to see you, so you can kind of safe spot it. And also, if you stand under the ranger, it's not going to kite around and try to hit you, so you can keep yourself safe from those two, and it does make the major the most dangerous in the room. Vanguards drop a lot of potions. They each have a chance to drop an overload. You're guaranteed to at least get 1 overload, but up to 3, and you get a lot of Xeric's aids and some revitalization. If you have any questions about the pre-Olm rooms, let me know in the comments section below, but let's go ahead and get to the Olm fight. Let's talk about how the Olm fight goes. You have to fight his right claw with magic, his left claw with melee, and the head phase with range. The fight consists of 3 claw phases and a head phase. If you have more than 7 players in the raid, you do get more claw phases. The claw phases are simple. You just kill the claws. Then in between the phase, you have to dodge crystals. On the last claw phase, Olm will have a green glow around his head, which means you have to kill the claws at the same time before you can move on to the head phase. And then you KO his head while crystals are falling, eventually getting the kill and grabbing your loot. Let's talk about Olm's attacks more specifically. Most of his attacks can only be used during certain phases, but some attacks can be used the entire fight. First, we have his auto attacks. He has a green blob, which is a magic attack, and then a little green rock, which is his range attack. You cannot predict which of these he is going to use, so you just have to protect from which one that he used last. The other Olm attack that can be used during any time is the prayer spheres. He's going to send a small colored sphere your way, which will drain your prayer points as soon as it is used, and it's going to turn off your overhead prayers. You have to turn on your overhead to protect from the sphere, melee for the red one, range for the green one, and magic for the blue purplish one. It'll also tell you in the chat which one is headed towards you in case there are multiple used. If you don't protect from it, by the time it hits you, it is going to cut your hit points in half. Next, we're talking about Olm's special attacks. These attacks can be used in any claw phase, and they're used in the same order every time. We're talking about lightning, teleport, and crystals. Every 4 attacks, Olm's going to use one of these specs, and always in that order. So we have a lightning attack, 4 attacks later would be a teleport attack, 4 attacks later is going to be the crystal attack, 4 attacks later, you got lightning. I think you're starting to get it. The lightning will stun you in place and turn off your overheads. The teleport's going to assign you to another player in the room, and in a few seconds, the 2 of you swap places and take damage. The further away you are from each other, the more damage you take. People just tend to run up to his thumb by the melee hand, so you really don't need any coordination to stand on the same square as each other. And the crystal attack's going to spawn some crystals under your feet. On his next attack, they'll grow out of the ground quickly and do a lot of damage if you don't move out of the way. Don't forget, lightning, teleport, crystals. Those are his special attacks. Though on the 3rd claw phase, when his head is glowing green and you have to kill the claws at the same time, he does add a healing attack after the teleport. So it becomes lightning, teleport, healing crystals. Whenever you hit Olm's melee claw while he's using that healing attack, you're going to heal him instead of doing any damage. Now let's talk about phase-specific attacks. You'll notice that when he comes up on phase 1 and 2, it says that he rises with the power of flame, crystal, or acid. When Olm rises by the power of flame, he has the flame wall and burn with me. The flame wall will trap a player, and somebody needs to use a water spell on the flame to get them out. The person that is trapped in the flames can get themselves out. The burn attack will slowly drain your health and stats over time, and if you stand near anybody else while you're burning, then you'll spread the burn, so be careful with this one. When Olm rises with the power of acid, he sometimes throws down acid pools around the room that you need to avoid, but he also can target a player with acid occasionally. When this happens, acid will spawn under your feet, and you have to make sure you keep yourself moving. When Olm rises with the power of crystal, he has 2 other attacks. Sometimes he'll toss out crystal bombs that'll explode shortly afterwards. The closer you are to the bomb when it blows up, the more damage it's going to do. He can also target you with falling crystals, which means you have to keep your feet moving like the targeted acid attack. In Olm's 3rd claw phase, when his head is glowing green and you have to KO the claws at the same time, he can use any of these phase-specific attacks, so be aware. One final attack to talk about, only during the head phase, Olm will toss out blue pools on the ground, just 2 of them, and in a couple of seconds, anybody who's not standing on one of those pools will take some damage, and Olm is going to be healed for 5 times the amount of damage that you take from it. Let's talk about the team roles for fighting Olm. You'll notice that Olm looks in 3 different directions during the fight. If Olm is looking away from you when he attacks, then he won't attack you. That means that it is important to keep Olm's head turning so that players during the fight take less damage, instead of just letting Olm stare in one spot and attack over and over again. When Olm attacks, he also will turn his head towards the area of the room that has the most people. So for the Olm fight, it's best to put 1 player on the melee hand, 1 player on the magic hand, and then the rest of the team runs back and forth in the middle to turn his head. If you're assigned to the magic hand, you need to make sure that you stay far from the middle, shown by the tile that I have marked here. and then the tile that I have marked here on the other side. It is important to stay on the outside here so that the team can run the head, attack the mage hand from over here until it is KO'd, and then switch to melee gear and go help with the melee hand. The player on the melee hand has the same idea. You want to make sure that you're staying far away from the center using this square by his pinky. You can do some melee damage to the hand, but it is going to cripple up after you do a little bit of damage during the first 2 phases. Whenever that happens, you can just switch over to your mage gear and hit the mage hand for a little bit, but make sure that your staff is on long range while you do this, or else you're going to run in too close and you'll mess with the head runners. And as for the head runners, your job is actually kind of the nicest because you take the least damage here. And you just need to run back and forth so that Olm's head is never looking at you. This only requires running between these 2 marked squares. You can attack twice from each spot before moving, and as long as you're doing this correctly, you'll never take any hits until you have to run over to the melee hand when the mage hand is KO'd. It's important that everybody still follows these rolls during head phase 2 to keep the head turning. So those are all of Olm's mechanics. If you would like to see a full example Olm fight all put together, then I'm going to have to point you to that full guide, as this guide is starting to get pretty long, and it is supposed to be the quick guide. This is where I'm going to start wrapping up this video, everyone. We didn't quite talk about scouting and how the raid's rewards work in this guide, and the gear section was a little bit short. And in general, if you're looking for more information than just this quick guide had, I do have my full guide linked in the description. Thank you very much for watching this quick Raids 1 guide, everybody. I hope this was a helpful rundown for the Chambers of Xeric's mechanics. If you still have any questions, just let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video or you just got some useful information out of it, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I do stream on Twitch, which should be linked on the screen and in the description. So if you've been enjoying the content, be sure to check me out on the Twitch side of things. I am also on Twitter and have a Discord, which are linked in the description. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and best of luck on your raids grind.